I am a hard-fighting soldier, and I'm on the battlefield. Well, I'm just a hard-fighting soldier, and I'm on the battlefield. Well, I'm just a hard-fighting soldier, and I'm on the battlefield. Well, I keep on bringing souls to Jesus by the service there. Can we sing it again? Well, I'm just a hard-fighting soldier, and I'm on the battlefield. Well, I'm just a hard-fighting soldier, and I'm on the battlefield. Every day I'm a hard-fighting soldier, and I'm on the battlefield. Well, I keep on bringing souls to Jesus by the service that I give. Well, I have a helmet on my head, and in my hand a sword and shield. Well, I've got a helmet on my head, and in my hand a sword and shield. Well, I've got a helmet on my head, and in my hand a sword and shield. Well, I keep on bringing souls to Jesus by the service that I give. Well, I've got to walk right and talk right and sing right and pray right while I'm on the battlefield. Well, I've got to walk right and talk right and sing right and pray right while I'm on the battlefield. Well, I've got to walk right.
Daniel chapter 6 is where we're going to spend our time tonight. And one of the things I want to talk about, y'all, real quickly is as we discuss Daniel's life and how God delivered him, what I really want to focus in a lot on tonight is Daniel's faithfulness and his commitment. I want you to really see those two things. And so before we jump all the way in, I want to share with you some points from an article I read, ChristianToday.com. It listed 5 things that you should to show your faithfulness to God. So there's 5 things that they kind of pointed out, and I want to share with you before we jump in all the way into our Bible study tonight. But I think this is beneficial as well. So if you want to jot these down, you want to maybe replay this later and look at it. But 5 ways to show your faithfulness to the Lord. Number 1, they suggested, is that to be unwavering in your belief in God no matter what happens. So be unwavering, that I trust God, I know who God is, and I'm committed to God, so I'm not wavering in my faith. Irregardless of what happens, what things come in my life, I will not waver in my faith, because I'm going to stay committed to the one who made me, the one who saved me, and the one who calls me his own. And so because I know who God is, because God made me, God saved me, and God called me as his own, I am not going to waver in my faith. So that's number 1. How do I show my faithfulness to God? I show it, number 1, by not wavering in my faith in him. Number 2, you have to separate yourself from the world's thoughts, practices, and patterns. So the world has thought practices. The world has thought patterns. And so there's a way that the world thinks, but because we are not of the world, while we are in the world, we have to think differently. You are a citizen of heaven, and that is where our mind is centered. Our mind is centered on things above. Our mind is centered on holiness and righteousness, not of things on this world. We're not scratching and scraping, trying to get everything we can, because we know that this world is not our home. So number two, how do I show my faithfulness to the Lord? Number two is I separate myself from the world, from the thought, practice, and patterns of the world. Number three, choose to do what's right all the time. Choose to do what's right all the time. Now, I know that's difficult. I know that's hard. But what they submit to us, that even when it hurts you, choose to do the right thing. So I have to do what pleases God even when it's difficult. Anybody can serve God when it's easy. Anybody can follow God when it's simple. But what they suggest, the way I show my faithfulness to God, is that I choose to do the right thing even when it's difficult. That's number three. Then number four, obey what God said in his word. So here it is, y'all, that God has clearly shown us and detailed and laid out for us in his word what it is that we should do. We have to be obedient. And the truth of the matter is that we show our love for Christ by obeying his commands. So if it is that I'm going to obey his commands, if it is rather that I'm going to show my faithfulness to him, I show that by obeying his commands. And then number five, love your neighbor in obedience to God. Love your neighbor in obedience to God. How we treat others is direct reflection of how we love God. Because you know and I know that there's some people that's hard to love. There's some people that make it difficult to love them. But I love people not because of how they treat me or how they interact with me. I treat people kind because I love the Lord. And so that's just five things I want to just grab for you on this afternoon before we jump all the way in. Five things that show our faithfulness to the Lord. And the truth of the matter is the reason why I want to lead with this is because Daniel was faithful. Daniel was committed. And when we see Daniel's commitment, we want to take that and ingrain into our lives and in ourselves to say, you know what? I want to follow Daniel's footsteps. I want to look like Daniel and walk like Daniel. So here it is, Daniel chapter 6. Let's look at verses 1 through 3. The Bible says, it pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps to be over the whole kingdom. And over those 120, 3 governors, of whom Daniel was one of those 3 governors, that the satraps might give account to them, so that the king would suffer no loss. Then this Daniel distinguished himself above the governors and satraps, because an excellent spirit was in him. And the king gave thought to setting him over the whole realm. So here it is. I want you to grab my thought on this evening and what I believe that Daniel is saying to us. And sometimes we say to ourselves, I'm just trying to do right. I'm not trying to get on nobody's nerves. I'm not trying to act like I'm holding that. I'm just trying to do right. And I just believe that that's where Daniel finds himself. That's where he's seated, that he's saying to everybody around him, I'm just trying to do right. I know it's difficult sometimes to do right, but I'm with Daniel, and I hope you are as well, that every single day of my life, I'm just trying to do right. At my job, I'm just trying to do right. In my home, I'm just trying to do right. As it relates to my work for God, I'm just trying to do right. So that's how we're gonna phrase this lesson on tonight. I'm just trying to do right. So here it is. Let me give you a little background. Daniel is in Babylonian captivity, but he doesn't allow his circumstance to change who God created him to be. Did y'all get that? That Daniel is in Babylonian captivity, but he doesn't allow his captivity to change who God created him to be. The Bible says, the text says, that he distinguished himself above all the governors and all the satraps because an excellent spirit was in him. He had such an excellent spirit that the king wanted to set him over the entire kingdom. I hope y'all grabbing this. And that's why I said it was so rich, because we grabbed the last part of it on Sunday. But you really got to, I want to walk through this first part of Daniel chapter 6, because this is where Daniel is seated. He has an excellent spirit that God has endowed him with. He is just walking in what God called him to be. He ain't trying to get on nobody's nerves. He ain't bothering nobody. He's in captivity, but he's still allowing God to use him in a mighty way. I wanted to say that on this morning, or rather this afternoon, just to share with you and to connect with you, that I want you to understand, don't change who you are to fit in with everybody else. You have been uniquely designed. You have been purposed by God. That God has touched you in order to solve a problem. God has touched you in order to accomplish a purpose. God has touched you to make his name great in the earth. So do not change who you are in order to fit in with anybody else. That listen, God has designed you and put you into place in order to be who he called you to be. And so I don't want you to dummy yourself down. I don't want you to try to fit into circles and brown those people. You be who God called you to be. I heard somebody say it like this, that nobody can beat you at being you. Did y'all hear that? That nobody can beat you at being you. So when it is that I'm my authentic self, I'm the best at it. And nobody can beat me at being me. Daniel wasn't trying to show anybody up. He wasn't trying to be better than anybody else. He just simply is saying, I'm just trying to do right. I'm just trying to do right. But even when you're trying to do right, somebody is going to have a problem. I wanted to put you on notice. I want you to make sure you understood that and really prepare you, because even when it is that you're just trying to do right, somebody's going to have a problem with what's going on in your life. So here it is. We're still in Daniel chapter 6. I want to look at verses 4 and 5. Here it is. Here it is. So the governors and satraps sought to find some charge against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find no charge or fault, because he was faithful. Nor was there any error or fault found in him. Then these men said, we shall not find any charge against this Daniel unless we find it against him concerning the law of his God. So here it is. The first point I want you to grab as it relates to verse 4 and 5 is you have to stay faithful to God. Stay faithful to God. So the text tells us that those in leadership positions, they take issue with Daniel because of God's blessing over his life. Daniel didn't ask to be blessed. It's not his fault that God has placed excellence in him. He's simply walking in the call that God has placed on his life, and they're trying to find dirt on him. But here it is, just because they didn't like what God was doing in his life, but all Daniel was doing is just being faithful to God. That's it, no more, no less. He's just simply being faithful to God, and people had a problem with it. I don't want you to run by that point. I don't want you to miss this. He was faithful. Daniel was faithful. And I'm saying that, don't rush past it, because it is Daniel's faithfulness that's the foundation of his life. That's where he is. It's his faithfulness that is his foundation. That's where he stands, and that's really what he's built his life on. And his faith, y'all, it allows him to stand in challenging moments. That when it is that you establish a life of faithfulness, that no matter what you walk into, you know that God's got you. Because I know that God orders my steps, because I know that God guides my way, I am faithful to that, and it's a hallmark, it's a principle of my life, and that's what Daniel was. Listen, and here it is, y'all. The only thing they could find wrong with Daniel is him following God's commands. That's good, y'all. That out of all the things that they look for, he didn't have no girlfriend on the side. He didn't have a drinking problem. He didn't gamble back around the corner. No, that wasn't Daniel. None of that was Daniel. The only thing they found wrong with him was that he followed God's command. I want that to be my testimony as well. That if the folks are looking for something to say about me, to say about us, that listen, all they can say is they spend too much time studying the Word of God. Well, sign me up if that's all you can find about me. Listen, I want people to say that they help too many people. That they just help too many people. Always trying to help somebody. Always trying to encourage somebody. Let that be said about us. They give too much money to the Lord. Let that be said about us. Let that be said. Listen, they give too much energy and time and always down at the church building, always volunteering. Let that be said. I want to be guilty like Daniel of serving the Lord. But the only way that happens is if I stay faithful to the Lord. You got to stay faithful to God. You gotta be committed to God. And it has to be the foundation of your life that I am faithful to the Lord. That's what Daniel was. That was his lifestyle, y'all. This wasn't a show he was putting on. This wasn't that he's showing out in front of somebody, that everybody gathered, now he want to be out front. No, sir, no, ma'am. That is the way he lived his life. He was faithful to the Lord. So drop down with me to verse number 7. I want to look verse 7 through 9. The Bible says, all the governors of the kingdom, the administrators and satraps, the counselors and advisors have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whoever petitions any god or man for 30 days, except you, O king, should be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing so that it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which does not alter. Therefore, King Darius signed the written decree. So here it is. I told you earlier that you're just trying to do right. You ain't bothering nobody. I'm just trying to serve the Lord. There will be people that have a problem with you just trying to do right, but you got to still stay faithful to God. But here it is. The next point I want you to grab is that your enemies will conspire against you. So don't let that be don't let that throw you off track. Don't throw your hands up. Don't throw in the towel. Don't say you done, you quit because your enemies conspire. That's what enemies do. Somebody said it like this: the haters gonna hate, and that's what they're gonna do. And so enemies are going to conspire. I hope y'all see the plan. Here's the plan. They can't find anything wrong on Daniel. They can't find no dirt on him. They can't find any issue with him that's immoral. So what they say is that we got to set a trap for him based on his faithfulness to God. So because he's faithful to God, that's how we're going to get him trapped, y'all. And here's what's crazy, that everybody in leadership and influence are in on the plan. I hope y'all saw that. The counselors, the advisors, the governors, the satrap, the administrators, everybody is in on this plan. But here's what boggles my mind. This is really what grabs me, that everybody's in on the conspiracy, but they have a good leader in Daniel. I mean, can you see that? That they have a good leader in Daniel. They have somebody who loves the Lord, who prays, who really is committed to God. They have a good leader, but instead of them actually just following and being blessed by Daniel, what are they doing? They're fighting for position. You have to watch out for people in leadership who are more concerned about themselves and not the good of others. You got to be concerned about people. You got to watch them, y'all, that if it's always about them, if it's always about lifting them up and about what's good for them, and they're not thinking about the needs of those they serve, that's a problem. Why is it a problem, Brother Nelson? I'm glad you asked. Y'all so engaging on this evening. The problem is Jesus said the definition of a good leader are those who serve. That's what he said. Jesus said that the greatest among you are those who serve. So if it is that I am going to be a good leader, you're going to be a good leader, whether that's at work, whether that's at the house, whether that's at the church. If you're going to lead, you first have to be a servant. In addition, y'all, the real work of serving, yeah, you got to be a servant, but the real work of serving happens when nobody is looking. That's when real servant stuff happens, is that when nobody is looking and I'm serving and I'm helping, because I'm not doing it to get lifted up. I'm not doing it for somebody to hear me or to see me. I am doing this in order to really lead like God called me to lead and lead like a servant. Daniel, y'all, what he's determined to be, Daniel is determined to be the same person both in his public life and his private life. I want you to really see that's what Daniel is really teaching us, is that I want to be the same person both in my public life and in my private life. What good is it to be a public success and a private failure? Just think about that for a moment, that everybody on the job lifts you up, but when you go home, they roll their eyes at you. That everybody at church really sings your praises, but your wife won't listen to nothing you say. Your children look at you out of the corner of your eye and wonder, who in the world is that praying? Because I ain't never heard daddy pray at home. Here's what I'm saying, is that it's no good to be a public success, but then a private failure. I want my public life to match my private life. Because at the end of the day, God sees everything, God knows everything, and there is no fooling God. So what good does it matter if you want to impress folks, but God sees you as a fraud and a fake? And so we have to understand that although his enemies conspired against him, they couldn't find nothing on him because he was faithful to God. And he wasn't just faithful when people saw him, he was faithful in his private life as well. So here it is. I want you to really see that in verse number 10, we're in Daniel chapter 6, verse number 10. Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went home. And in his upper room, with his windows open towards Jerusalem, he knelt down on his knees 3 times that day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as was his custom since early days. My God, that's rich, y'all. My God, that is so much depth to verse number 10. It's so deep, I think I want to read it again. Now, when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he knew that the decree had been signed. He knew what the king had committed to. Although the king didn't know, Daniel knew what the plan was. He knew what the plot was, and he knew it had been signed. But what the text says is Daniel just went on home. He did what he always done. He stayed consistent, and in his upper room, with his windows open towards Jerusalem, he knelt down on his knees 3 times that day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as was his custom since early days. The next point I want you to write down, I want you to consider, is that you have to remain consistent. Remain consistent. So here it is. Daniel knew the plan of his enemies, but he refused to let that change him. He knew what his enemies were plotting and planning, but he didn't change because that he was consistent, y'all. He kept maintaining his consistent 3 times a day, stopping for prayer. That was his routine. And no matter what anybody else said, no matter what anybody else done, he was committed that he was going to pray. I'm telling you, y'all, that you have to be committed and have a strong prayer life. That sometimes the only way you can make it through is a prayer to God. The only way that you're going to be able to navigate through life and through relationships and issues is a direct line to God. Daniel knew that it doesn't make any difference what my enemies say. It doesn't make any difference what the king shares. I have to make sure that I stay in prayer to God. I stay in connection with God. But watch it, y'all. He stays consistent, and they know that he's consistent. His enemies know that. They know he's faithful. They know his routine. So they are watching and waiting to see what he's going to do. So this is what they say, y'all. I can see it in my mind's eye, that we done got this decree signed. Now, Daniel has to make a choice of what he's going to do. But they already know Daniel. They know he's faithful to God. So they're saying to themselves, we got him now. I really wanted to make that point and kind of bring that out for you to understand that somebody's watching you every single day. No matter where you go, no matter what you do, at your house, when you go to the grocery store, when you come to church, when you go to work, wherever you move and maneuver, somebody's watching you. And they are watching you to see what you're going to do, how you're going to react, how you're going to handle yourself. As a matter of fact, there are some people watching and hoping that you fail. There are some people that's watching you and hoping that you cuss somebody out. There's some people watching you hoping that you fall down and you remove yourself from the place that God has elevated you to. But I'm praying for you that you do not allow people to bring you down. I'm praying for you that you do not allow the enemy to push you to failure. That's my prayer for you, that you stay righteous, you stay holy, and even when somebody wants you to fail, that you stay in your right relationship with God. But here it is, y'all, and I learned this a long time ago, that if you determine what you're going to do before you face the situation, that's half the battle. I think I need to say that one more time. That if you already determine what you're going to do, how you're going to react, that is half the battle, because you already know whatever the situation is, this is what I'm going to do. So I'm already determined. I'm already got in my mind that no matter what happens, this is how I'm going to handle it. This is how I'm going to move. This is how I'm going to operate. And so you have to remain consistent. So you're saying to yourself, and what I mean by that, if it's Sunday, you're going to worship. Whether it's online or whether it's in person, if it's Sunday morning, I'm going to worship. If it's Bible study, I'm going to be involved. Don't call me. Don't check on me. Don't ask me to go out to dinner at Bible study time. I'm going to Bible study when it's time for Bible study. Listen, if there's a prayer call, I'm going to be on it. What I'm saying is that if you've already made up your mind on how you're going to move, listen, no matter what happens, you already got a determined and made up mind. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be in worship. I'm going to be in Bible study. I am going to be on the prayer call. I'm going to pray in the morning when I get up. I'm going to give my life to God and my allegiance to God. I'm not going to let other things get in the way. That you have to be determined that I'm going to do that. If God blesses me financially, I already determined I'm going to give a portion back to him. I just already made up my mind. So I ain't got to wonder about it. I ain't got to go back and forth in my mind about it. I ain't got to reason and ration. Already know that when this happens, this is what I'm going to do. That's what Daniel was. Daniel has a consistent lifestyle that no matter what the circumstance, he already knows what he's going to do. And because he already knows what he's going to do, he remains consistent. So that's my prayer for you on today. Remain consistent. Stop going up and down and left and right and wondering, am I going to serve God? Am I not going to serve God? Am I going to do this? No, remain consistent and have a consistent lifestyle committed to the Lord. So here it is. I wanted you to really grab this one more thing, because verse 10, we could have spent all night on verse 10. There's something that last phrase, he says, as was his custom since early days. I just needed you to grab this. This was something that was put in his lifestyle from an early place. What I'm saying about that, y'all, is that I am grateful for my parents. I'm grateful for my grandparents. I'm grateful for my aunts and uncles and people who poured into my life at an early age and put principles in my life early on in my life. And let me stop here for a moment, because I really want you to understand this, parents and grandparents and those who have influence and charge over younger people. It is imperative that you put principles in their life at an early age. It's imperative that you pray with them. It's imperative that you read Bible stories to them. It's important that you get them connected in a good church. Carmack Boulevard is a good church. It's imperative that you don't let them make a decision on that, because what you're putting in their life at an early age is going to pay dividends. The reason why I am committed as I am right now, is because my parents put some stuff in me at an early age. The reason why Daniel was committed, the text says it, y'all, the reason why Daniel was committed to prayer and serving God and faithful to God is it happened since his early days. When he was in Sunday school, when he was in pre-K, when he was in junior high, it's early days stuff that had this commitment in Daniel's life. Don't miss that. Don't run by that. I know you got to fuss with them. I know they don't want to get up, but you got to make sure them early days are filled with the Lord, because those early days will determine their future. They're going to come up against some stuff that they're going to have to make a decision for themselves. And because you put the early days of God in them, they're going to make the right choice. They're going to choose the right thing. And so I want you to grab that. I want you to see that it was established principles early in his life. So verse number 16. So the king gave the command, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of lions. But the king spoke, saying to Daniel, your God, whom you serve continually, he will deliver you. So here's my last point, that God will deliver you. That sounds familiar, don't it? That God will deliver you. Let's walk through it one more time. That Daniel is just trying to do right, y'all. He's just trying to do right. He's just trying to serve God. He's not bothering nobody. That's all he's trying to do. He's just trying to follow God and be faithful to God, just trying to do right. He didn't ask for the excellent spirit. He didn't ask for those things. He just been faithful, and God blessed him. And as a result of that, he stays faithful to God. People have a problem with the blessing over his life, the favor over his life, but he continues to stay faithful to God. His enemies conspire against him. They come up with a plan that, you know what, we're going to get the king to sign decree that for 30 days, if anybody lifts up any god above the king, that now they're going to be thrown to the den of lions. But Daniel gets wind of it. He heard about the writing, but that doesn't change him. He remains consistent. But here it is that the king said, grab it, y'all. Daniel didn't say this. The king said that your God, who you serve continually, he will deliver you. So what it is, and I want to take my time with this, y'all, that what the king is saying is that your faithful service, Daniel, is going to put a demand on God's goodness. That's what he's saying, is that because you faithfully serve God, that you're going to now put a demand on God to be good to you. Why you say it like that, Brother Nelson? Because Jesus says it like this in Mark 10. He says that anybody who left houses or land or family will never lose out. As a matter of fact, he said that I will repay you 100-fold. If you leave your family, houses, and land for my sake, I'm going to bless you. And I'm not just saying that I'm going to bless you in the heavenlies and give you a home in heaven, but he says, I will bless you in this time and in the time to come. You got to read it for yourself in Mark 10. So somebody would say it like this, that you cannot be God-given no matter how hard you try. When you are faithful to God, he will always show up for you. And listen, Daniel didn't say it, the king said it. The king knew who God was and how God operated, and he said to himself that the God that you serve, Daniel, he is not going to leave you when you need him the most. He is not going to abandon you. You've been too faithful to him. And that's all I'm saying on this evening, that listen, that when you are faithful to God, don't you waver and think that God's not going to show up for you. Don't you think for a moment that when you have faithfully served God, that he will not help you in your time of distress, because he will. And your faithfulness, your commitment, your steadfast, your consistency with God puts a demand on his goodness. Because it is that I'm faithful to God, God is going to show up in my life. He's going to take care of me. I'm just a testimony on this evening that God has kept a roof over my head, that God has kept food on my table. He kept my family safe. God has been so good to me. And he's been good to me because I've been faithful to him. And because of my faithfulness to God, he has it's a reciprocal relationship of where he now is showing favor over my life. But here's the crazy thing about God, is that God blesses you even when you act a fool. That's the kind of God that we serve. Yeah, he takes care of those who are faithful, but he reigns on the just and the unjust. There are people who do any and everything against God, but he still puts food on your table. That he still provides for you. That's the kind of God that we serve. And so what do you think he does for those who are faithful to him? What do you think he does for those who serve him? He did it for Daniel, and he delivered Daniel. So he says now, the king says, he will deliver you. That's what the king says. He will deliver you. So what the king is doing is the king is making a statement of faith. He's making a statement of faith that your God, who you serve continually, he will deliver you. But watch it, y'all. He says all that before Daniel is placed in the lion's den. He says all that. So this is show enough faith. This is real faith. That before I get to the situation, that the king is already making a statement of faith that when you go into this den of lions, I already know that your God, who you serve continually, that he's going to deliver you. So the king says this. He says this statement of faith. So here it is. So I just believe that if this king, who is not a servant of God, he is not a part of the family of God, this king getting. And so if he has this statement of faith, what do you think we should have as a statement of faith? I'm glad you asked on this evening. I got a few for you on this evening. That after you've argued with your husband or wife, I want you to say a statement of faith that God is going to restore our marriage. That's the kind of faith I want you to have. That you just got into a heated argument, y'all just done said some stuff, but when you come to your senses and you walk away, you say to yourself, God, you're going to restore our marriage. You're going to bring this thing back together. You are going to mend. You're going to make whole. I know you can do it, God, and I'm making this statement of faith that you're going to do it. Listen, when you go visit your son or your daughter who's done some stuff and they're in prison right now, when you leave, you tell them and you make this statement of faith that God is going to bless you with opportunities and he's going to bring you out of this place. That's the statement of faith I want you to make, is that although they are in prison, although they are in some difficult situations, they don't have to actually be in a literal prison. They may be in a prison of sin in their life. And you're tired of seeing them act like this. You're tired of seeing them in that. And I want you to make a statement of faith like the king said, that listen, God's going to open the door for you. God's going to make a new opportunity. And God's going to get you out of this place. We're going to make that statement of faith. I want you to have this statement of faith that when you look at your paycheck and you compare it to your bills and you're saying to yourself that I've got more bills than I got money. I want you to make this statement of faith that God is going to bless me to be debt free. God is going to bless me to be debt free. And not only is he going to do that, he's going to increase my finances. That yeah, I know it looks like that you got less going out than you got coming in. It doesn't just look like it. It is a reality. But I want you to make the statement of faith just like King Darius did, that listen, I am trusting God and I'm making a statement of faith that it ain't always going to be like this. It's not always going to be a struggle. It's not always going to be paycheck to paycheck. I just believe that God is going to open up a door opportunity in order to make my life better. God will deliver you. That's what I believe, is that whatever you're facing, whatever you're going through, that God will deliver you. You're not put in a den of lions, a literal den of lions, but sometimes them bills feel like lions. Sometimes the people in your house feel like lions. Sometimes the people on your job feel like lions. But I'm just telling you on this evening that God will deliver you. That's the kind of God we serve, that he will step into our situation and he will shut the mouths of those who are trying to attack us. He'll change the very nature of what's trying to attack us. And God will turn our situation around. I just believe it and I declare it that God will deliver you. I've seen him do it too many times. I've seen him intervene. I've seen him get us out of situations that, you know what, that we didn't know how we were going to get out of. But God delivered us. And I'm telling you that Daniel 6, you ought to just read the whole thing and just immerse yourself in it, because again, it's so packed full of really nuggets from God to help us in our daily walk. Because you can't just focus on Daniel's life and know the story that you don't see it working in your own life. That you don't see how God is doing these same kind of things in your life. That God is intervening, that God is working, that God is delivering, that God is moving in your life the same way he moved in Daniel's life. And so, I'm just trying to do right. And you got to say that to yourself, that listen, every single day of my life, I'm just trying to do right. Just trying to serve God. Just trying to be the best mother I can be, the best husband, the best sister, the best brother, the best co-worker, the best boss on my job. Wherever you are, just try to do right. And when it is that you try to do right, I believe that God can intervene on your behalf. And so I just want to share that word with you on tonight, and I hope it blessed somebody. I hope it was an encouragement to somebody that you just try to do right. And when it is that you're faithful to God, you're consistent to God, that God will deliver you, that God will intervene, and God will work on your behalf.